Welcome everybody to the new product portion of the INFUSION20 presentations. I am appreciative of the fact of being able to be here today to present all of these new products to you and talk about the developments we have at McElroy. As Chip said, I did have the opportunity to work for Ditch Witch for 25 years and got to be a part of the development of many great products and address some challenges in the infrastructure industry. And as I told the engineering group when I was given the opportunity to come on to McElroy in February, one of the things that excited me the most about that was to be a part of a company that has products that lead the industry, a company that makes high quality, highly reliable products, and that is given the opportunity to go out and address the needs and the challenges on infrastructure job sites worldwide. It's great to be a part and to be able to listen in to what those needs are and what the challenges really are for people that do this work day in and day out. As I look across the entire McElroy product line, I see many products that are there because they've addressed needs and challenges that some of you have had. Whether it's fusing polyethylene pipe, polypropylene pipe, whether it's manual fusion, whether it's hydraulic, whether it's butt fusion, socket, or miter, whether it's using rolling or tracked vehicles, whether it's using productivity tools or some of the testing tools that are also in that product portfolio. Those all came about because of needs that were identified in the industry and some of the challenges that you have faced on a day-to-day basis. But we're here to talk about new products today. And before we talk about some of the products for 2020, I do want to reflect on a few that have been introduced in recent years. First of all, the Hornet XL, the all-in-one PPR outlet tool, built to address this need of PPR outlet fusion in tight quarters. Built to address a need of needing to do this in a vertical or a horizontal orientation. And built around the challenge of needing a tool that is self-centering and is easy to use. Taking advantage of work that's done for other products for socket heads and other heaters that are available for those. The Polygon. The first, industry first, 3-in-1 tool for butt, socket, and miter fusion. A tool that was developed with pivoting jaws that have locking mechanisms to hold them in place. Again, with an easy operator interface to be able to allow you to do that fusion. A tool that was built with Datalogger capability. The first manual fusion device with that capability to be able to provide that quality assurance check of the fusions that are built. Now this Polygon has begun to see applications other than what it was originally intended, as sometimes happen with the products. And as some have watched the videos lately that have been released this year, they've realized, I need one of those for my fabrication shop. Maybe that applies to you too. And the Acrobat Quick Fit, built to address the need and the challenge of fusing large diameter pipe in close quarters. Again, in areas where I can't get a full carriage in. So I need one that's lightweight, modular, one that can be built around the pipe, and one that can fuse again in any orientation that's needed, whether it be vertical or horizontal. The Quick Fit has provided a great product to address those needs. Again, being Datalogger compatible to address the quality assurance part of this. And is another one of those that has started to see applications in areas some may not expect. If you haven't looked at these three tools, take the time to do so today. As we get more into products that have been introduced over the past year, We continually look at our Datalogger software for improvements that can be made and items to address those challenges that you bring up. Some of those needs, recording of pressure test, the integration of all of the McElroy optimized cooling, some of which Jim spoke about in his presentation. And even the ability to record traceability information manually as needed when those times come up that that's the only way to get the information in the system. Whatever those needs are, they continue to be brought and continue to be implemented where possible. Last year at this time, there was a new family of heater boards that was introduced to this group. Those heater boards sometimes resemble the things and the needs we have that we don't want to change. So one of the needs of this product was, please keep the great ergonomic feel that we've always had. While in so doing, take the opportunity to improve the overall reliability of some of the components. So electronics were added that have 10 times the life of previous components. We're able to provide positive lock connections with no screw terminals. Now, these heater boards started shipping out in the new heaters in February of this year across the largest volume per portion of the product line, and then completed their introduction in June of this year with the rest of that product line. Overall introduction has gone well with a very high reliable product and very good feedback on those that have received them. And then finally, the hydraulic cap lock. Something that is quite frankly the most requested and talked about item that I have received since I've been at McElroy. Although that may seem strange, it highlights the pains that can be experienced out on the job site. So in this case, I can bet that there are many of you here today that are been out there on the other end of that phone call or been there on the other end of that job site when the news came in. The individual who went out to put diesel into the units put diesel in the hydraulic tank, and now we've got a mess to deal with. So we needed something to provide some protection against that. Something that was simple, something that gave us quick identification and allowed for that chance of it occurring to go down in the future. Now, while these three introductions may not be anything large, sometimes they are the things that are needed. So whether it is software updates or upgraded electronics or a simple cap lock, they are the things that address the needs that had come up and are important parts of the product line as we continue to roll all of it forward. But that is not all that we have for you here today, and not all the products that we want to talk about. We do have some exciting new products that we want to introduce to you today. Some of those that we believe will move this industry forward and take us on our next steps down that road of where we want to go. Products that have evolved and implemented improvements from many of the feedback we've received, not just recently, but over the years. Back in 1995, the first Datalogger was introduced to provide a way to record critical information on a fusion joint as it was completed. And that product has evolved through several technology platforms and through features that have been added to it over the years. 25 years later, we are proud to introduce to you today the brand new Datalogger 7. Taking advantage of advancements in technology and incorporating the feedback that some of you have provided on Datalogger operation, the Datalogger 7 operates on a brand new, rugged 7-inch display that runs on Android 9. A package that also includes a brand new hydraulic pressure transducer. One that is a smaller form factor, rugged construction, and takes advantage of communication methods to be able to provide connectivity to the overall system. A new cable for that pressure transducer and this Datalogger 7 tablet with a new rugged connector as well. But that's not all. Part of the feedback that we've received on the Datalogger 6 is that we sure wish the battery life was longer. Well, that's been heard. And we are proud to also state the Datalogger 7 now has more than twice the battery life of today's Datalogger 6. That's right, more than twice for those long days on the job and for those long jobs that you have to complete. Now, part of the best news that we have about this new product is the price. The new Datalogger 7 is available now for $7,328. That's correct. The same price that you're paying today for a Datalogger 6 package. So if you're someone that has been waiting to upgrade a device that you currently have, has sat on the sidelines not knowing for sure when to jump in, or maybe just wanted to see how well this Android platform did work for the Datalogger product, there is no better time than now to take advantage of this price up until November 1st when the price increase takes place. So you can have a more powerful, more productive, and latest development Datalogger, again, for the same price that you're paying for one today. For a full review of all of the technical details and a more in-depth look at even the software advancements that are being introduced, please tune in to Mike Pacheco's Datalogger session. We do have something else that we want to introduce to you today. Many of you who were able to come to INFUSION20 were introduced to a concept referred to as Next Gen. A concept that looked at the overall operation of the Fusion machine to improve the overall operator experience and look at ways to incorporate technology into that to do things maybe a little differently than before, but in a better way. Well, that development has continued, and it has incorporated other feedback and other ideas as we've moved along and been done in a way to develop a platform that we can now work from for a new family of Fusion machines. And we would like to introduce to you today that new family of machines. The new Trackstar I-Series. The Trackstar 630i, 900i, and 1200i. Now there were some overall goals that we had when these projects were started. One is to improve that overall operator experience. Two was to build a platform, as I said, that we can incorporate across the product line with a common approach to be able to draw from that development and do it in a way that allows our users to have that great experience on more than one machine. And three was to make some improvements to the machine where we know needed to be done and provide features that had been requested through some of those needs and challenges that some of you had raised. There are literally dozens of changes on these units from one end to another. We will not try and cover all of them here today, but we do want to look at some of the overall ones to give you a good perspective and overview of what these units are. First, why the I? Why the nomenclature for a 630i, 900i, and 1200i? Well, again, these units are designed with a new platform, mechanically, hydraulically, electrically, and control-wise, that separates them from the products that we've had. We wanted a clear distinction between what is a Series 2 unit and what is a Trackstar 900i. One that everybody could associate very quickly with this new generation of machines. They're intelligent. They're intelligent in the way they communicate with the operator and with the way they communicate within the machine. And they're integrated. All of these different pieces and systems are integrated together in a way to provide us the best overall product to meet the challenges of those fusion jobs that are out there in front of us. So let's look at the overall shape of the unit. First of all, the cowlings, the sheet metal, and if you'll look, the brand new black cast bumper on the end of the machine. Each of these is done with a purpose and has a specific reason. Whether it's directing the airflow to provide us the cooling that we need on this machine, whether it's to provide easy access to service elements and to items that are needed to get to on a daily basis, or whether it's to provide security for items that may need to be locked up or stored at the end of the day. Each of these elements has a specific purpose in how they're designed and how they fit together. One specific item on here that you'll see is the section towards the fixed end of the jaws on the sheet metal that steps down and is lower than the section behind it. Again, that's a specific purpose. The feedback we had received was we really need the ability to fuse a T on the vehicle without removing the carriage. By providing this area here, we can now fuse the T on the vehicle simply by removing the outer fixed jaw and leaving everything else in place. Whether it's the T, special fitting, or whatever it is your need might be, that is now in place on all three models. Underneath the cowlings, let's talk about the power plant. We have a brand new Perkins engine for these units. A Perkins engine that was selected because it is compliant with the EU Stage 5 and the US Tier 4 regulations without the use of DEF or diesel exhaust fluid. A Perkins engine that provides us a torque advantage at the RPMs we work at, and an even greater torque advantage as the engine load increases and causes it to droop. A Perkins engine that provides service access all on one side of the machine for those daily service points that we need access to. And a Perkins engine that has a very large availability for a service network when the time comes that we need to have something done to it. Looking at the frame or mechanical portion of part of the machine, one thing you will notice is that the pipe lifts on the 630i and 900i have been moved from the four-jaw carriage down to the vehicle. This gives us a very robust mounting area for those. It gives us a very robust storage for the heater and facer, and provides a common approach across all three models for how those interact and how the rest of the machine interfaces both hydraulically and electrically with the pipe lifts. From the ground drive perspective, we've taken the ground drive motor and drive mechanism from the movable jaw end of the machine to the fixed jaw end of the machine. And that provides us a couple of advantages. One, it shifts that weight towards the fixed jaw end of the machine, helping with overall stability and balance of the unit. And two, if you are using this unit in a pipelining configuration where you're driving towards the movable jaw end, it places the tracks in tension to provide a better tractive effort for those types of operations. If you look at the back of the carriage, you will see a brand new indexer design. This indexer design takes the best of the existing 1200 design with the best points of the existing 630 and 900 design and brings them together. Again, it's a common approach across all three models with just minimal parts differences for the different sizes. Something that allows us to provide a better overall package for all three units and the better ability for our channel partners to work on, understand, and even stock parts for. Embedded within the indexer design are sensors that allow us to know where the heater and facer are at all times. These then assist with collision avoidance to try and prevent those times where interactions between the indexer, the jaws, or the carriage might cause damage or cause something to get broken. For the hydraulic system, we have again taken advantage of advancements in some of the components that are out there now, and we have taken advantage of the opportunity to make it common amongst all three models. So the hydraulic system and schematic for the 630i, 900i, and 1200i are all identical with the exception of the outriggers that are in addition on the 1200 only. This hydraulic system takes advantage of this new Perkins engine, which has a PTO mount on the side to allow us to mount our piston pump and our gear pump to drive all those hydraulic functions in a more robust manner and in a way that is more easily mounted to than some of the crankshaft options we've had to use in the past. The overall system pressure for the unit has been raised over 3,000 to give us more power when we need it for ground drive, for pipe lifts, and some of those functions that do use the higher levels of pressure. Additionally, if you look deep inside the unit, you will see that where possible, we have replaced hydraulic hoses with hydraulic hard lines or hard tubing. These give us a much cleaner finish and approach to the overall unit, in addition to providing the advantage of a foolproof check of where they can be connected. With the hard line or hard tubing, it has a defined start point and a defined end point that is the only places that they can actually work out to be connected. So once they're installed, either through assembly or a rebuild, we know exactly where they need to be. Moving on to the electrical side of the vehicle, we'll first start with the new Power Control Module, or PCM. This is a McElroy designed and McElroy built power control module. This provides our heater control, the management of our heater power, as well as communication with other devices on the unit to be able to handle situations that come up. Additionally, it has built in a GFCI, or ground fault circuit interrupter. The advantage of this is because of that communication, if there is a trip, it's now resettable through a display. Also, it's configurable with the different requirements or regulations in different areas. We can adapt to those and configure the GFCI portion as needed to meet those requirements. If you compare this to previous models, we're able to use some of this new technology to reduce the complexity of the components we're using and really the overall cleanliness of the assembly together. On the vehicle side, we do have a new 7-inch vehicle display. This display is also high visibility, sunlight readable, and takes advantage of some of the newer technology in the display world. It is connected to the rest of the machine and has the ability to communicate information that we have not had the ability to show in an easily readable form before. The display can show service information, can show different operation information, and has the ability for the user to change what they see based on their own preferences. All things that allow it to be configurable again for whatever job it's on or whatever crew is running it. If you move over to the carriage side of the unit, you will also see an integrated tablet into the control system. This is the same tablet that we just talked about for the Datalogger 7. The difference is this one is integrated into the machine and is a part of it. Because of that integration, we can take advantage of the fact that we know it's always there on the unit to be able to provide different interaction for the operator. So while an operator is in the middle of a fusion, now he can communicate through the tablet certain commands to the machine. He can also receive back information from the machine through the tablet. Things to help him with the process. Things to help the operator know what to do and not to do. And things to allow the machine to take care of in certain cases so the operator doesn't have to remember the exact sequence of events that have to occur. Allowing this tablet to be integrated with the machine is a CAN network or controller area network. It is technology that is widely available on many forms of mobile construction equipment. And it's technology that allows us to communicate between all of the devices on the unit simply using 2 wires between them and not requiring us to run the wiring from all devices back to one central hub. This controller area network, or CAN, is the interface between these many devices and provides us advantages and opportunities for that information. If you look at the carriage controls around the tablet, we now have keypads and no longer have the manual hydraulic valves. These keypads provide the operation for all of the same functions in relatively the same location of what an operator would experience on an existing unit. But these are smart keypads. They can provide feedback to the operator. They can change colors when certain items are engaged or when certain items are disabled. They can help lead the operator to the next step of what they need to do. For control of the indexer and the carriage, we have 2 new paddle levers. These paddle levers are able to allow us a more precise control of those functions and to provide that type of feedback to the operator again. The keypads and the paddle levers are all integrated with the rest of the system through the use of either a CAN network or the electrical controllers that we have. Speaking of the controllers, we have two new controllers, one on the vehicle and one on the carriage, that are a robust, hardened controller to survive in the environments that we have and to provide us with that reliable control day in and day out. The electrical harnesses are now a fully braided harness with a nylon braid to help protect them through some of the abrasion or the work that goes on the Fusion machine. These devices and harnesses are connected through sealing and locking connectors to help protect out against water and dust intrusion and those other elements that like to make our electrical systems not work as well as they should. Overall, it is a significant upgrade, not only in the components, but also in the application of them for our units and for the ability to control these Fusion machines going forward. And finally, I had mentioned service. Since we have all of these devices communicating with one another, and since we now have the ability to display that information, we have access to more service and more diagnostic information than we've ever had on one of our TrackStar units. Service information as simple as, when does my air filter need changed? Service information as, what is it that is upcoming? Or troubleshooting information where I do have an issue and I want more information on what are the potential causes for that issue, or what are the things that I need to evaluate as far as what it's doing to the equipment. All of this is now provided in an easily readable format, whether you're the operator of the equipment out running, whether you're the owner of the equipment wanting to see how well the equipment's been used, or whether you're that service technician that is trying to troubleshoot an issue so that it can get back up and running as quickly as possible. Well, that's a very high-level view of many of the new features and technology that have been built in to the TrackStar I-Series. Again, those that we are excited to tell you about, and we'll be even more excited to show you when we do have the opportunity to demonstrate them to you in person. For a more detailed review again of not only the I-Series, but also the user interface for this, please tune in to the session for Paul Donaldson and Greg Ruoff on the Next Gen Deep Dive, and with Mike Pacheco on the Next Gen User Interface. And now, I'm sure there's some of you out there thinking, that all looks great, but what does this actually cost? Well, again, we are excited to tell you today that the introductory price for the new I-Series units is only $3,000 more than an existing unit today. So whether you're talking a 630i, a 900i, or a 1200i, each of them is only $3,000 than the corresponding unit that's available today. Now, one thing to keep in mind, an existing unit today does not include a data logger built in. So from a comparison purpose, you realistically need to add in that $7,328 for the data logger to the existing unit and compare that with an I-Series to be able to have equivalent capability between the two. So with that thought, you're actually saving more than $4,300 if you order one of the new I-Series under the introductory price. Again, that's available for orders before November 1st. As far as availability goes, we are expecting to have initial deliveries of those first units in the early part of Q1 2021. If you want more details about McElroy's involvement with those initial deliveries, please tune in to Vince King's channel partner session, and he will expound upon that further. Well, that's what we have for our new product introductions. Again, we look forward to the opportunity for when some of you have the ability to come to Tulsa and can put your hands on this new equipment and see it in actual operation. I thank you for your time and again the opportunity to introduce these products today.
All right, Jeff, welcome to the Q&A. I think we're all online now, and great presentation.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks for being part of the team. We are excited to have you along with us here. Got a series of questions coming in. I would encourage everybody to please enter your questions in the Q&A box so we can get those going. Top of the list here, Jeff. What cylinders are going to be available on these I-Series machines?
It's a wonderful question, Jim, and one that we thought might come up today. So as far as cylinder options, they will be the same cylinder options that you have today on a Trackstar 630 Series 2, 900 Series 2, and 1200. So the same options that we have on those for each of the three models is the same that will be offered on the I-Series going forward.
So for the 630 and 900, that'd be low force, medium force, high force, green, orange, and yellow. And on the Trackstar 1200, that would be high force and medium force, the green and orange cylinders both. Same as we have today, right?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, next question up here. So you talked about Datalogger 7. Is this a Datalogger 7 is included with the new Trackstar I-Series? It is actually comes with it, or do I have to buy it separate?
So yes, the Datalogger 7 tablet will come included with every I-Series unit that gets delivered, as well as the pressure transducer will be built into the unit, and the cable will be there as well to connect the tablet. So all those components will be built into the machine and delivered with it, so there'll be no need to purchase a Datalogger 7 separately for an I-Series unit.
Here's one, it's probably coming from some of our mine users out there in the world. Do the I-Series have more horsepower, and does that mean they can work in higher altitudes?
The Stage 5 offering for the engine in the I-Series units will be around that same 74 horsepower option. The Stage 3 offering will be up around 100 horsepower. And so the intent there is so that we have that opportunity for them to be able to work in those high altitude mines where we haven't really had that option in the past.
Okay, so back to the Datalogger questions. Will the I-Series still work if my Datalogger goes down? And what are my options?
Yeah, the vehicle on an I-Series unit will still operate. You can still drive it. You can still function the setup part of it. You can still move the carriage around. You will not be able to fuse on an I-Series unit without the Datalogger tablet in place. So although you can move the carriage, maybe do some work on the unit, position it, run the pipe lifts, you will not be able to actually fuse if the tablet is not there. Just like other components that are part of these units, whether it be a hydraulic valve, a facer motor, or any of the other electrical components that are on there, if that particular component doesn't work, then it needs to be fixed or replaced to be able to complete whatever the job is that someone's working on.
So can I take an existing, so if I have a Datalogger 7 on the job site or on the shelf, can I just plug it in and keep going?
That is actually one option, is if you have another Datalogger 7 tablet, you can take it over to an I-Series unit. You can connect it up to the cable that's there. It will recognize that it's now on an I-Series unit, and the software that is loaded on that tablet will just work with that unit. It will enable the functionality that's needed and necessary to be able to run an I-Series unit without any other configuration or the operator really having to set anything else up. So yes, if you have another tablet available that's a Datalogger 7, you can take it over and connect it to the machine to run it. If for some reason your Datalogger 7 on the I-Series unit does go down.
But it gives you that function, that flexibility, that whether it's a standalone Datalogger or a spare that you have, it's just plug and play.
Yeah, it's just plug and play, and that's part of the intent of how the design works there, is so that it does give you, as you said, that flexibility and the ability to move that if that need does come up one way or the other.
So this one kind of speaks to the overall electronics. What kind of testing did the I-Series go through? Concerned about electronics exposed to field conditions, bad weather. Can you kind of talk about, you talked about a little bit on the CAN technology and some of the other pieces, but can you expand on the electronics that are part of this componentry?
Absolutely. At the core basis of this is components that are within themselves already tested and ruggedized. So the electrical components that we have, and a few that were shown there on the introduction, have their own rating and testing that they've all been through by their manufacturers, to whether it's water or dust or vibration or shock or other things that can potentially cause them to go down. The connectors are a sealed connector with a positive lock that prevents those outside entrants from coming into that connection and potentially distorting the electrical signal and otherwise. And as we talked about in the introduction, the wiring harnesses are all braided and covered and have a method of protection there from just the general overall abrasiveness and wear that can occur on a piece of equipment. So that's where we start, is with components that are rugged, components that are individually tested, and components that we feel certain will survive in those environments. Then as far as the unit goes, we then take the unit and we've tested it and will continue to test it in temperature and other effects on it to make sure that the way we have all of our components located on the unit, the way they're interconnected, and the way they work with each other is not affected as well by those same potential problems.
Right. And I'd throw in there that the concept vehicle that many of the people who attended INFUSION20 saw had hundreds and hundreds of hours of testing on it prior to 2019, and it has continued to see that testing throughout all of 2020 since INFUSION19, along with these products. And this is automotive grade technology that is proven technology, not only in the automotive industry, but in that construction field as well.
Yeah, I'd say for a lot of those components, the great thing about the ones we have chosen and the way we're applying them is we're not putting them in situations that they've never been in before. we're putting them in applications that they've run in before. As you said, those applications we tested on the concept vehicle. We put time on it there to prove what we already believed to be true, but wanted to make for certain that that was the case. And reached out to our suppliers and partners when we did have questions relative to that, to ensure that what we're doing with these components is something that we know is what we want to do and will last a long time.
Yeah, think about the Super Duty trucks that are on the job site. Think about ditch witch equipment. Think about all those things that are out there. This is proven technology. It's sorry to jump back to mine from this morning, but that fast follower concept is these are things that are proven out there in the field. A lot of detail. Give a little bit of a teaser for is it tomorrow that Greg and Paul are presenting, Jeff, or is it this afternoon? I forgot.
No, that's tomorrow. So tomorrow morning, Paul Donaldson and Greg Ruoff will be doing a review or a deep dive on these I-Series units and show you a little more on what the actual components look like on a unit and some of the different aspects of it.
So for those of you following along at home, that is the next gen tech session at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And those guys will really go into a lot of the technical details related to some of those ruggedized components. All right, next question. Jeff, does the unit have a built-in charger station for the DL7, or will you have to remove it to charge it?
Well, the easy answer is the cable that the DL7 connects to charges it all the time. So you don't have to disconnect it to charge it ever. As long as it's plugged in on the unit, it is charging. So it's effectively running off battery power of the machine all that time. So you don't have to disconnect it and move it to a different spot on the unit to charge it. You leave it right over there where it is on the carriage controls, and that cable provides the voltage necessary to charge that battery at all times.
All right, so lots of curious people about the Datalogger. Will my existing transducer work with the DL7 and the I-Series?
No, the existing transducer and cable that work with today's Datalogger will not work with the Datalogger 7. They require a different cable and that different transducer that we showed that takes advantage of that CAN technology to be able to use it for communication, and the new connectors that we have for connecting all that up.
Okay, so I have, yeah, so I'll come back to that one. I've got two questions that really kind of butt up against each other. When will next gen machines be available for overseas markets?
Well, that's a depends kind of a question. So we are working on the stage 5 models currently, and they'll follow that timeline that was discussed in the introduction. So they'll be the ones that will be open for orders initially. Anyone that requires a high sulfur or the stage 3 option will be following that. And that won't be until sometime probably closer towards the end of the first quarter as we get through those initial stage 5 engines and the things that are necessary for them.
So depending upon your regulatory requirements in your area, it's going to make a little difference in that first quarter timing, whether that's early, late, or we're rolling into second quarter.
Correct.
All right. For our UK market, will we be offering a I-Series Auto?
Yes. The great thing about the I-Series units is that because everything is integrated and built into them, is that there's no physical difference on the machine between a standard offering and an automatic. So the automatic version is a way to operate the I-Series machine, but it doesn't require anything else additionally to be put on it. So that offering will be available. It's the same machine, and we'll have to go through that approval process that we've gone through in the past as new products come out that have to be to ensure that the regulatory authorities there approve of them.
But again, it is essentially the same machine with just with a different control module. So that approval process, we assume will go fairly easily like it has in the past.
Yeah, we wouldn't expect any issues. Just know that we have to go through that process to be able to get them approved to use on those job sites.
And relative to that, the control system, I'll throw out another one for tomorrow, Mike Pacheco's sessions, which are deep dives into the I-Series, and those are all called, those are called Next Gen Deep Dive tomorrow, and he will go into really a lot of detail on the available options within the control system that allow you to choose auto or guided workflow or fully manual. So, okay, here's a new one. Is there an enclosure available for the 900 and 1200? A pop-up tent only goes so high, it would help us fuse in adverse weather.
Well, we haven't worked on anything specifically for the I-Series relative to that type of an offering.
Okay. All right. I was waiting for this one to come up. You showed a 500 last year, and I've really been wanting a 500. What about the 500? When do you think you'll get to a 500?
Well, currently, it's not a unit that we're working on. We took the advancements and the developments that we worked on that concept unit last year and applied them to the 630i, 900i, and 1200i's you've seen. But the 500 will be something that we will have to evaluate out in the future in terms of when it will fit into the timelines for the product development team to work on.
And that stage 5 is really a priority for introduction in terms of the existing product line as well.
Yes, unfortunately, the regulatory areas and agencies for the diesel emissions continue to introduce those. And so the timeline for stage 5 has come upon us, and therefore we had to work on the units that use those engines to ensure that we continued to have product to support the areas that required the higher level of emissions control that those engines and now those units provide.
And this really gives us a platform to build in those really high value features that we can start moving down in size over time. So this is really a great platform for us to start from. So let's look at. Sorry, I've got a little glitch here. Is the DL6 still available? Why would you want a DL6?
There are still DL6s available. And I would encourage anyone that is still wanting a Datalogger 6 to work with your sales team and Mike Pacheco on what makes the most sense for each of your particular needs and applications. But why would you want one?
Yeah. Who knows? But we do have them available, and so there will be a transition there where you can do that if you're wanting to pair up equipment in your fleet. Is the I-Series engine cover going to be fiberglass? You want to talk about kind of that overall construction feature in the machine?
Sure. So as you saw in the renderings that were shown there, there is what we'll call a top dome or covering there, and that is a fiberglass covering, as well as the side panels on the unit. Those are done in such a way to provide us the best overall shape and covering for that unit. And then the area that's towards more of the fixed jaw end, obviously, is sheet metal, as was shown in the respective pictures and otherwise you saw there. But pretty much everything over the engine part of it and on the sides of it at least the upper half of it is fiberglass to provide us the shapes we can get in a cost-effective way and something that we can move around as well too.
Next one, moving on to operations side of things. Well, let me back up to that one a little bit. So all of that control system, or all of that enclosure system, as you guys looked at that, computational fluid dynamics, can you talk a little bit about the noise on this machine and the attenuation, what was looked at there between the engine, between the design of that cowling, the other pieces, and how does that compare to the existing Series 2?
Sure. Again, just to kind of give us a little bit of a hint for tomorrow, I think Paul Donaldson will cover a little bit more of this in his presentation to the detail level, but we did use analysis of that overall airflow as it goes through the coolers and around the engine and out of the particular areas of that engine compartment, power pack area, to ensure that we're providing adequate and proper cooling for the overall unit, as well as looking at what temperatures would be with that. And just to overall make sure that's in balance with what's necessary from the engine and again from the different components that are there. That analysis then allows us to do that without as much trial and error in the physical sense from building and looking at that. It does also allow us, as you mentioned, noise, to look at ways to help make the unit as quiet as possible. And look for those areas where potentially we could provide a little different setup to keep the noise level down, and just continue to make those the best that we can from a noise perspective.
When do you expect for training to start rolling out for I-Series for operators and mechanicals?
The best way to answer that is that I know Vince King and the sales group have a plan in place, and that we are going to roll that out as we get through the rest of the year here. For the details, he'll talk a little bit about that in his session for the channel partners tomorrow. But as we roll through the rest of the year, we'll get that prepared up and start to educate everyone on what the different aspects of that are, both from an overall technical training aspect and from the operator training part of it.
Yeah, the beauty here is that a lot like the DL6, a lot of this is very intuitive. It is an easy thing to look forward and be able to say, I understand how this works. So really looking forward to that aspect of it. So there's an incorporated transducer in the I-Series. There's some industries that have a calibration requirement. Do I have to bring my entire machine in to do that? Or how do I calibrate the transducer on the I-Series machine?
Great question again, Jim. The overall, there will be a new calibration software that will reside on the Datalogger 7 tablet that will provide a vehicle and a way to do the calibration on the I-Series unit. So the overall process will involve bringing out another gauge to connect to the machine as a way to check. And then the software will walk the calibration process through all the steps, similar to how it works today, where you actually take the transducer in to this setup and have the manual pump to set the pressures at the different levels. Now you will connect the gauge on the machine. You will be able to check it against the readings from the pressure transducer on the unit. And then the calibration software will go through much of the same process and then provide the ability to produce that certification calibration document for that I-Series unit. So you won't have to bring the whole unit in, just got to take a gauge out and then use your Datalogger 7 tablet to walk through that process.
Excellent. All right, so this one comes back to, and I want to keep coming back to this one. Why do I want a DL7? Will the DL7, Datalogger 7, work with other track units and rolling units?
Yes, a Datalogger 7 will still work with everything that is in the product line today. And it would be intended to be the products you would use for that. You still will connect that pressure transducer up to all of those machines the same way you do the pressure transducer that's used with the Datalogger 6. And it will still work with the software the same way a Datalogger 6 would, and that with all of those models. It's going to provide all of the features that it has, both physically and electrically, with that extra battery life that it has. And so that would be, part of the reasons that we would expect people to move to it. But it's going to work with everything that's out there today that is already Datalogger compatible.
Yeah, and if I just add to that, that's the beauty of this Datalogger 7 is if it's being used, if you buy a Datalogger 7 as a standalone unit for use with your existing equipment, the software looks just like the Datalogger does today. There's nothing different. If you had a machine that went down or something that happened in the field and you take a standalone Datalogger and plug it into an I-Series machine, it knows it's now plugged into an I-Series machine and launches that I-Series operation software. So it knows what's out there. It doesn't matter. You don't have to recalibrate the device. You don't have to do anything different. The standalone Datalogger or the device plugged into the I-Series, they all work the same, and vice versa. You wouldn't necessarily take your tablet off of an existing I-Series, but you could use it as a standalone Datalogger as well. You just couldn't fuse on your I-Series machine, just so it doesn't make a lot of sense there. So we've talked about this. Will the I-Series machines still be able to be remotely driven? And will the same track vehicle package work with all markets worldwide from a fuel perspective? So 2 questions. Let's start with the, will it be able to be remotely driven?
Yes, the Hetronic remote or the track drive remote that we use today on our Series 2 models will have one that works with the I-Series. The only difference is it transmits its signals across CAN via communication versus being wired in directly to those valves. And so it will look and feel very much the same as a Series 2 unit in terms of that track drive remote that you hold in your hands and the operation with the unit that it provides. In fact, if you were able to open the doors on the side of the unit, you will see that that is where that particular remote is stored whenever it's not in use. There's a designated place there for it to live whenever you're not running it, so that you don't leave it in other places where it potentially could receive damage.
And it has a hot swappable battery in there as well.
Yes, and if you'll, to put too many plugs in, tune in again tomorrow morning. I think Greg will give you a great view of what those batteries are, and a battery charging station that is behind that door as well for that battery that goes into that remote.
Exactly. And you kind of touched on this one earlier with the fuel perspective, but the vehicles will just like track machines today. The availability is dependent upon the market requirements, but there will be market offerings for the vehicles and the engines for various low sulfur, high sulfur requirements around the globe.
Right. Yeah. Just like units today, as you said, if if you are in a geographic area that requires ultra low sulfur diesel, then you're going to use that stage 5 engine, and you're going to continue to do that just as you would today. And if you're in a market that doesn't have that regulation or doesn't have that type of fuel provided, and you have the higher sulfur diesel, then you're going to end up with a stage 3A engine.
And I have a Trackstar 630 Series 2 carriage today. Can I put it on an I-Series vehicle?
Unfortunately, no, because of the integration of all the different components, the hydraulics, the electrical, and all of those interfaces. None of these Series 2 carriages will be able to be put on an I-Series vehicle. It will require that I-Series carriage so that we have all those connections and all of the functionality there that we would expect.
So here's a throwback to the concept vehicle. So let me ask it a little bit differently for those that didn't see the concept vehicle. Does the I-Series do away with the selector valve for fusion heating and facing pressures, like the concept that was shown at INFUSION20? So said a little differently, talk about how some of these systems are controlled, some of these operations are controlled in the I-Series.
So, sure, there are hydraulics built in the machine, and specifically for pressure control, we have a pressure manifold that controls all of those settings for the operation. So yes, the user doesn't have to move that selector valve to switch between facing pressure or fusion pressure or things that they're on existing units today. And within that pressure manifold, working with the rest of that control system, then we know from the operation of the unit what we're trying to do. And so then we can selectively choose what pressure setting we need to be at. For example, we know when we turn the facer on that we need to be at facing pressure. And since everything is integrated together, we know when all these things are happening on the machine, so we know we're facing, therefore we're running at facing pressure and keeping the operator from accidentally having it set at fusion pressure when that occurs. And so there are adjustabilities. Mike will cover a lot of that in terms of how you do that and the interface of how that looks, but those things are built into that overall control system for the unit.
So it really takes the mundane, repetitive tasks and automates those tasks. I mean, if we look at data from the data loggers and data vault, we know that the shift sequence is probably one of the most common mistakes that people have, just going through that shift sequence, either doing it too fast, doing it backwards. We're automating some of those processes and simplifying some of those processes so that the operator's real knowledge of the fusion process can be utilized. Really focus that operator on the truly critical tasks that are part of that.
Yeah, the great thing about having an integrated system like this and a data logger integrated into it is the data logger now knows what we're trying to do in the steps of the fusion process and can communicate with that rest of the unit where the hydraulics are actually located, so that yes, the operator doesn't have to do that, or as you would say, Jim, the operator can't forget to do that and do that sequence wrong. It's going to be done the same way every time and in a repeatable, consistent fashion to give us the performance we want.
Yeah, what about and crash avoidance? You want to talk about crash avoidance, collision avoidance there as well?
Yeah, and so there are, I think as we talked already a little bit, there are sensors built into the machine to be able to know where the heater and facer are and to know where the indexer is and to make sure that we don't put our equipment in a position where certain things are going to interface with each other and run over them. So we don't want to open the jaws into the indexer whenever it's positioned behind the jaw. And we can prevent that from occurring now because of knowing where everything is and what the operator is asking the machine to do. If we have the jaws open, we can prevent the indexer from moving into it and causing damage from that aspect as well too. And there's a lot of little interactions here, but they're all thought out in terms of allowing the operator to be able to run the unit as they need to, but also protecting it from these scenarios that can happen.
The new heater power control board, you talked about that a little bit earlier. What data, if any, do you have on any failure rates that we've seen out of that control board?
Okay, assuming we're talking the ones that were introduced this year,
Yes.
The failure rates on them have been extremely small. I don't have the exact numbers from our most recent review of that, but we're talking at the middle of the year, we had 2,000 out there that had been sent out for all the different models, and we had just a handful in the single digits of ones that had failed. So very small percentage overall. Some of those we have already determined fixes for what those issues were and have implemented those and are continuing to monitoring that. But overall, we're talking tenths of a percent.
Excellent. Will the data logger be able to be removed from the machine, or is it built into the machine?
No, the data logger can still be removed. In fact, it's done in a mounting that allows you to be able to very quickly pull it off, take all those pictures you're used to being able to take, both of job site or of the bead or other things that you would need to do, and then very quickly return it to that mount. And so that's been part of the overall thought process again on that design, is still giving you that ability to use it for all of those functions without it being just locked down to the unit.
Let's see, sorry, let me look through here. Talking about the I-Series, which the machine has potential to be fully connected. Does that mean potential data analysis, troubleshooting? Is it going to be connected to satellite, GPRS? How do we see that happening?
Well, for now, those units are fully integrated with all of the devices that are on there. And so there is the ability to draw those fault codes and potential other service items out of that unit. We do have the data logger connection to the vault that allows us to get information through that conduit. There's not a telematics or a standard GPS other receiver type or satellite system on those units, like might be on some other construction vehicles in some of the other different markets. But we are preparing our way on this platform to be able to gather as much of that information as we can and see where the real value is from it. Because as we all know, information doesn't really do a whole lot for us unless we know what to do with it. And so that's why we're trying to make sure all of those are in the right way before we implement even further advancements on that.
Lots of great questions. Coming down here to the end of it, one I'll answer real quick. Somebody asked, does the Datalogger 7 have a lithium battery? The answer to that is yes. You can get some feedback on that one. Again, not to try and push some of these off, but there will be a lot of discussion on deep dive with Mike Pacheco's deep dive on the Datalogger 7. So go see that one and give you some options. Let's see, another one real quick question that we'll answer here. Will the calibration unit we have now for the DL6 work to calibrate the DL7 transducer? The short answer is yes, there is some software change and some interface change that will be required to be able to do that. The connector off of that transducer is a little bit different, so we will be using a data logger to drive that. So you'll see some software updates and some instructions on how to do that, but it'll still use the same pump and control system that you have today, just be a software difference and use the data logger itself for that. Will the I-Series use the same in-ditch kits as the Series 2?
No, we will have a specific one for the I-Series as those hydraulics and connections, and especially the electrical, have changed. They will be a new kit that will be specific to the I-Series.
Boy, the hydraulic cap. I am so excited about that new lockout that you have. Is it going to be available on new equipment going forward?
Actually, Jim, the answer to that is yes. We're making a change in production where that will go out as standard equipment for all of the models that use that particular track vehicle. So for the Trackstar 28 and the 250 millimeter, the 412 and the 618, here very soon we will be implementing that to be a standard part of the production units, and they will all go out with that already equipped on them.
All right, one or two last questions here. We talked about certifying the transducer already. Will it, with the upgraded DL7 and its components, will it eliminate communication errors with two-way radios common with Motorola radios when keying the mic?
I don't know that we can answer positively to any of those, not knowing what all the different radios are that are out there in the world and potentially what emissions they're putting out. We are going to continue to evaluate that and see if we're having any continued issues with the Datalogger 7 and its pressure transducer and the way the communications occur there. So we'll continue to evaluate that and determine if there's anything else that needs to be done.
All right, Jeff, with that, gosh, we've had some great questions. Exciting to have you here as always as part of this event. Exciting to have you here as part of the team, and incredible stuff coming out. There will be a lot of detail that we weren't able to cover today in the Q&A and the breakout sessions. So please pick the breakout sessions and attend those as much as you can. Anything that you would like to close with, Jeff? Or
sure. Again, I wish that this being obviously my first infusion, that we could do a little more of this in person, but have appreciated the fact of being able to present the introduction of this new family of units and the new Datalogger 7 that we are so excited about as they establish that platform going forward. And in Fusion 19 we celebrated 50 years of Fusion, so here we are in Fusion 20, and we're going to celebrate the start of the next 50 years of Fusion.
Absolutely, that's well said. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. The 3 o'clock sessions will begin here in just a few moments, so please look at your calendar on this event webpage and choose the sessions that are appropriate for you. Also take advantage of visiting our sponsors and or the McElroy virtual booth. You can click through there and see not only the sponsors, but their virtual booths along with all of the sessions that are available. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you soon, and hopefully we get to see everybody in person at some point real soon too. Thanks again. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks.